Wonderful. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to discuss transfer and particularly a recent study called the African American Transfer Tipping Point. And we've got a couple of facilitators today. So I'll have everyone do just a very quick intro. Nisa, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nisa Julian. I'm the Dean of Lead and Equity here at Miramar, and I'll pass it over to She.
Hi, everyone. I'm She. I'm your researcher.
Thanks, She. And I'm Laura Pachenko. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator, and I'm also a professor of sociology and the Rising Scholars Coordinator here at Miramar. We're going to be joined as well by our wonderful Transfer Center Director partway through, so we will have her presence shortly. So let's talk a little bit about this particular workshop. So we just wanted to kind of set it up and explain why we thought that this would be a good workshop. So the first part of this is that this is part of our Light the Fire professional development series. And the Light the Fire series is really focused on what we can do to capture our first year students. We have, unfortunately, not great data around persistence of first-year students. So even from their first semester to their second, and then also from their first year to their second year. So we wanted to do a series that looks at what are things that we can do in order to encourage the persistence and success of students who join us, looking at their very first semester even. And there are four main strategies. So this comes from Dr. Al Solano and work that he's done with the broader Guided Pathways community. And these strategies are resource sharing. So making sure that we're looking at students holistically, really emphasizing to students the importance of meeting with a counselor and getting an ed plan. And we now have access to this amazing tool, the program mapper. We always want to push students to meet with a counselor, but we know that having some kind of interim tool is incredibly helpful. And that's really where our program mapper comes into play, giving students some guidance before they're able, and in between sessions with a counselor. And then in the classroom, thinking about how we can really tailor our assignments, our assessments to social justice focused, project-based and experiential learning, and then building in career exploration along the way as well. We've also identified a series of courses called Light the Fire courses. And so these are within each ACP, the highest enrolled intro courses. And so the idea is most students will be taking one of those classes, at least one of those classes during their first semester. Okay, so then why focus on transfer? So unfortunately, we see disproportionate impact of our Black, African American, and Latinx students across all of the metrics that we use, but we really haven't focused yet on transfer. And the idea that we had was if we focus on transfer, which is our end goal, we'll be forced to really think about all of those other metrics along the way as well. So thinking about how other metrics can improve at the same time. We also are seeing an emphasis on Black African American student success as part of our board priorities. We see this built into our annual theme, Vision 2030, and of course, the very important SCIF funding, the student-centered funding formula. So it really goes to show how important transfer is, and it may not be something that we're necessarily thinking about during our, very first semester, but it really is essential that we're thinking about that potential end goal. So I'm going to pass it over to She now, and we will talk a little bit about data.
Okay. I'm going to briefly walk you through this African American Transfer Tipping Point study. This is a 2-year study conducted by the RP Group, the Research and Planning Group, which is a nonprofit research organization It's been the lead of research in our area. They did this study over the past 2 years. They divided this study into 3 major phases, and they focused on African American Black students in the study. In the design, they took a mixed methods design. Basically, they had quantitative study as well as a qualitative part. They were trying to address 2 main research questions. They were trying to identify the factors, both academic and non-academic, contribute to students' likelihood of reaching that transfer. The second research question they were trying to address is which programs and practices are associated with greater persistence to and through the tipping point and ultimately the transfer gate. So I'm going to briefly walk you through these 3 phases and give you a few examples of key findings. It's a comprehensive study. I've put the link to all the reports, PowerPoints, and webinar recordings up on the right corner. So you can click the link and access the full package. Can we go to next slide? Thank you. So as I said, the study was divided into 3 phases. The first phase, they used MIS data, which is the data that each college submits to the chancellor's office. They looked at course taking patterns as well as students' demographics. They had some amazing findings I'm going to walk you through later. Then in the second phase, this is a qualitative study. They did interviews and focus groups with college practitioners, as well as transfer motivated students. They focused on the students at colleges that have higher success with transfer among African American students. Then in the third phase, that's a complex comprehensive student survey. They administered this student survey with all the community college African American students in California. So it's they reached out to all of the students, African American Black students in our system. They got 7,000 respondents. Quite amazing. And in this survey phase, they actually intersected major student experiences they found in phase 2 with other research frameworks. I think I can talk about it a little bit now. So the 4 core student experiences include those are the findings in the second phase. Then the other research frameworks, they intersected these core experiences with include student success factors, 6 factors. I think we are all familiar with these 6 factors because they are in our college's research planning framework. The second framework they intersected the core experiences with is the framework for building students' transfer capacity. That one has 4 core factors that are impactful on student transfer. The framework includes university affordability, pathway navigation, school life balance, and support network. Then the last research framework they intersected those student key experiences with is the racial microaggressions. This framework includes ascription of intelligence, assumption of criminality, second-class citizening, and pathologizing culture. So they did this comprehensive survey in the third phase and surveyed 7,000 students. And I'm going to share with you just a few findings given the time limit. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And in this slide shows you the findings in the first phase. So basically they found that these factors, the ones on the top, they just showed that students who had these experiences are more likely to transfer. Then the bottom three, as you can see, if students are low income or on DSPS or are have been put on probation, they are less likely, far more less likely to reach transfer tipping point compared to those who or have not been on probation. So just by looking at these factors, we can see that passing transfer level English and math in the first year is essential, is critical. And you can see this large percentage indicating far more likely that these students are going to transfer, followed by passing transfer level math, then transfer level English. Also, counseling has emerged as an important influencing factor as well. Then Umoja is a small program serving African-American students, and you'll see in the second phase that they have some amazing findings for students engaged in Umoja program, how differently their motivation, their outcomes are. Okay, let's move on to any questions? Shall we pause for questions? Just raise your hands or stop us if you have any questions. Okay, if not, let's look at findings from the second phase. So as I mentioned, in the second phase, they did interviews and focus groups with students and practitioners. So basically, the participants of the study really recognize the important roles that our faculty members play. For the first one, passing math and English, faculty help students build their confidence as students, increase their mastery of key subjects, and support their success. So they really recognize the important role faculty members play in this process. They also recognize the importance of academic counseling, but participants just reported that they felt they were not heard, not seen, not valued, not respected, and they did not see themselves reflected as well. So the third finding, Umoja, they found this is a key experience students mentioned in their journey to the reporters, that Umoja, it's mandatory, dedicated, and proactive counseling offered by Umoja allows the time and space for counselors who reflect students' backgrounds to build relationships with them. Really, it's they feel connected, they feel engaged, they feel this sense of belonging for students engaged in the Umoja program compared to those who are outside the program. Then the last key factor, academic probation. They just felt that the word probation is triggering. Students and practitioners actually have different perceptions regarding this term, academic probation. For practitioners, they feel this is the safe net. This is the steps that we take to make sure that students are more successful. Whereas for our students, they just feel that this term academic probation itself is scary. It shows just a lot of have-tos, that you have to do this, you have to do that. And they really just felt that they're in trouble, they're being punished. So these two different perspectives are reported in this second phase of study. Okay, let's go to the next slides. As I mentioned, based upon those four key students' experiences, they intersected those experiences with three more research frameworks. So they focused on passing transfer level math and English, academic counseling, Umoja, academic probation. They wanted to see, given these four key experiences, if students are more likely to identify those 6 student factors or other research, the factors in other research frameworks. Let's see a few examples in the following slides. Okay. So for example, in this slides, you'll see that African-American Black students who did not pass math on the first try were more likely to report having experienced microaggressions during their time at their college. Whereas for English, there's no such association was observed. Okay, questions? Okay, in this slide, okay. In this slide is another example. The more frequently African-American Black students went to academic counseling sessions, the more likely they were to identify with each of the 6 student success factors. The last orange bar, if you see counseling 3 or more times, they're more likely to identify with each of the 6 student success factors. So for those students who went to see counseling a lot, they felt they are more likely to feel that they're directed, focused, engaged, connected, valued, and nurtured. Okay, let's see the next example. So this one is for UMOJA participants. So UMOJA participants are more likely to receive academic counseling. They reported that they have been able to connect with someone at the college who supports their academic success. And they also reported that they have found 1 or more communities or groups where they feel they belong at the college. So they really have that. They're more likely to experience that sense of connection and sense of belongings, engaging in UMOJA program compared to those who are outside the program. Okay. Okay, this slide is for the last key experience being on probation. So students who were currently on probation were much more likely to report the challenges of university affordability, school life balance, pathway navigation, and finding a support network. That is the framework for building students' transfer capacity. So look at the gap between the light blue and the dark blue. You see big gaps pretty much for each of the challenges. And also on the right-hand side from the graph, you can see that students who are currently on probation, they were also more likely to report that they have experienced mental health struggles, challenges related to the pandemic, difficulty completing transfer level courses, lack of access to basic needs, lack of access to necessary computer tools at home, and lack of access to helpful counselors, advisors. So they reported they were more likely experience all of these challenges compared to those who have not been on probation. Okay, so these are just examples of the findings. If you're interested, just use that link to access all the materials, webinars, recordings, and PowerPoints and reports. Amazing study, amazing findings. Okay, let's take a look at our Miramar transfer data and really figure out why we care. Let's move on to the next slide. So just a brief introduction of the methodology. We looked at transfer data adopted the SCIF metrics definition prescribed by the state. So we looked at 12 or more semester units minimum in academic year prior to academic year of transfer to a 4-year university. Then college of record was used to determine which college received credit for transfer, because we, as a multi-college district, we have students taking classes across colleges in our district, but who gets the credit? There's a method to calculate that. And we use the college of record to determine. Okay, let's look at our numbers. So let's take a minute, look at the transfer volume reported here in this table. Down at the bottom, the table shows you the transfer volume, and the bar chart shows you the percentages. So as you can see on the top, African-American Black students they have the small as the volume of transfer. And on average, we're seeing 2 to 3% of them within all of those who transferred. And in our student general population, we have on average 6% of African American students. So with that percentage in the general population, and we're seeing 2 to 3 transferred. That's the gap there. If you look at Latinx students, it's the same story. We have about 26% of Latinx students in our general population, but when you look at their transfer, it's just around 20%. So they're underrepresented here. So I'm seeing gaps, and we reviewed that transfer tipping point study. We were able to see those factors that are impactful on students' transfer. So let's start our discussion to figure out our why and how to mitigate the gaps.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Shi. That was really, really interesting. And we wanted to give you all a few minutes just to digest this data, to talk about it. I think we saw a lot of numbers, and potentially a lot of them were upsetting to see. So we thought that it would be good to break out into some smaller groups and chat a little bit about what you noticed, what questions you have. So we're going to put you into two groups, two smaller groups. We'll give you roughly 10 minutes or so. We'll give you a warning, and we will also pop into the chat the slides so that you can take a look at those graphs again. Okay, so you should be getting an invitation momentarily.
Shall we join one of them or no?
Had a great discussion in your breakout rooms. So our next part of the workshop is going to involve an overview about the Transfer Center. But before we dive into that, we wanted just to very quickly check in with the breakout groups and see if you had any takeaways, if anything jumped out at you. Does anyone have any feedback, comments from your discussions? And please just jump on in.
Thank you. I was like, somebody unmute me. Okay. So in our group, we were discussing really talking about the experience of our African American students specifically from the get-go, right? So really looking back at, yes, the transfer level math and English is a really big indicator of success, which we totally understand. But we were talking about the sense of belonging and community being an important key factor into students doing well academically as well, right? So we were talking about, if you feel like you belong and that you have a seat at Miramar and that this is your campus, you're more likely to feel like I have a community of support that I can go and ask for help if in the event that I'm failing a class or I'm not doing so well or I don't know what resources I need, where do I go for help? I feel like we try to infuse that a little bit, right, into when we do, for example, in outreach, when we do presentations and things like that. But I think as a whole, if we could do more of like an intrusive type of orientation for our students of color who are like I think about my experience, right? Like myself, that I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not sure I belong here. And I didn't go to the community college route. And I can only imagine for our students, right? They have to build community twice when they transfer. Not only here, they endure everything. And then they're like, oh, you got to go to somewhere new, right? And it's another struggle. So how do we really prepare our students from their day one and really remind them that the sense of community and the sense of belonging exists here because we don't have the programs like Umoja, Puente, and all this other affinity groups, right? That we are going to try our best, which I have to say I have seen improvements at Miramar. Like when I started, there was absolutely nothing. And now I feel, with LEAD, I'm like, yes, we have an equity dean. Like that's amazing. But definitely not where we need to be, right? So I think in our group, we were talking about the frustration of like, how do we do this when we feel like we don't have the resources, or we tend to compare ourselves to our sister campuses. But I did give the example of like, for our native students, right? Like we really didn't have anything, and now we have this opportunity, and we serve a very small population, but we're going to try our very best to, serve them the best that we can, and provide the resources that we can. So I think that's kind of how you start. Like you have to start somewhere, right, with the numbers. But I'll let others unmute too.
April, I saw your comment in the chat, so yeah, okay.
Okay. Just the comment that I made is I just wish we could get rid of the toxic word probation, not just for students, employees, everywhere. And one of our members said that there is a new word that's going to be used. Does anyone know what that word is that's going to replace the word probation, if there is such a word? Because someone said they were thinking of doing something differently. Well, if not, I just wish they would, because that's a simple thing, just to remove one word, because it only belongs in a penitentiary. It doesn't belong in academia, or for that matter, in any line of work. It's just a terribly toxic word.
Where did Sabrina go? I don't know, but I thought Sabrina was next in the queue. Anyone else want to jump in with anything? Thank you so much for those comments. That was really fantastic, and we're so glad that you had great conversations. Okay, all right. Thank you, Kristen. Did you want to say anything? Otherwise, we'll pass it over to Emmy. I'm sorry, I don't know what the mute thing is about. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Kristen. So we're going to hand it over to Emmy, and I'm going to reshare my slides. Fantastic. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Laura. So hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Emmy. I am the Transfer Center Counselor Coordinator here at Miramar. Thank you so much for having me. We just kind of wanted to go over the services and resources that we provided, and ways we could possibly implement them in the classroom or in the different services that you all are working in. So just to begin with, these are some of the services and resources. I picked a few, but we definitely do more, but these are the main ones that we focus on. We do assist students with researching four-year universities and colleges. So if a student comes in and they're like, I have no idea, because there's so many different four-year universities and colleges to pick from, we do help them research the different 4 years. So we really like to help students with that, because it is a lot. It's really overwhelming when you first start this journey. So helping students narrow down. And I like to do this really early on. And I always tell students when they first start out here, it's never too early to start thinking about transfer, especially researching the different 4 years, because sometimes, a lot of the time, actually, we do only see students right when they're getting to transfer, and they just want assistance with the application because that's what they think that we do, or all that we do. And sometimes when it gets to application time, they realize maybe the four-year university that they want to go to doesn't have their majors, and they get really shocked by that. So even little things like that is researching 4 years that have a specific major that they're looking for, I think is really important. We do offer transfer workshops as well. So we do offer workshops for students who are just starting the transfer process. So we do have transfer basic workshops for students who want to go to a Cal State or UC. We go over the basics of admissions requirements or what they're looking for in the admissions process as well. We also offer workshops for students who are applying, so they're getting ready to apply. So we do offer those as well. And then even after they apply, we do offer workshops for their next steps after they are applying to their four-year universities. So we do offer a holistic round workshops here in the center. And then we do have four-year university reps. I think this is a very underutilized service. 4 years like our local campuses, SDSU, UCSD, San Marcos as well. They definitely come here and they do want to speak with students. Sometimes they have appointments available and they don't fill their appointments. And I think, again, it's so essential that our students are utilizing this service because some of these representatives are reading applications. So they do know what they want to see on the application. So again, going back to transfer starts when you first step on this campus, it's so important that they utilize that resource so they can figure out, again, what they can do to prepare and be the best applicant as possible to these four-year universities they're trying to get to. We also have transfer fairs as well. So we do offer a transfer fair in the fall and we also offer one in the spring. We did offer one last fall and then we'll offer one in April this semester. That's where we have four-year university reps from the Cal States, UCs, private out-of-state schools. They all table in Compass Point. So they're available for students to just kind of walk up or drop into their tabling, and then they are able to get information, some freebies, and we usually try to provide food as well. So again, these are some of the services and resources that we have here on our campus. Any questions, comments on services, resources that we provide? Oh, okay. And then next slide, I just have just a contact for some contact. Oh, that's right. If you have questions, then feel free to put them in the chat. I think Jennifer has a question or comment, but she can't unmute.
Okay, I can unmute now.
Okay, great.
I guess my question to you is when we're talking about, because I'm a firm believer with you that, transferring stars on day one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the message like for first time to college students who are coming in, like, because believe me, we have students who work here who are like, I never been to the transfer center, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like, what do you mean? And they're in year two, they're already year two,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm
Mhm.
like, you gotta go. This is part of your job. You have to go. But I don't know how to embed that message, like even when we're out in the community and telling students, hey, come to Miramar, transfer begins on day one. Like, how do you really put that in a silver platter for them? How would they engage with the transfer center when they just started at Miramar, I guess?
That's a really good question. I do tell students we're really drop-in friendly as well. So if a student just wants to drop in, I always tell if I'm talking to students and doing like a class presentation, even if you just want to drop in, introduce yourself, I think that's a great way. We're pretty drop-in friendly, just to let us know, hey, these are my goals. And a lot of the time people will kind of just come in and they'll just be like, well, what do you all do? Because, like you said, Jennifer, not many people even know that we're here on campus. And we're trying to change that. So since I've been here, we are trying to change that a little bit and try to do more classroom presentations. But yeah, even if they want to just drop in and just tell us again what their goals are and how we can assist them. And I think that's really important. I think we were talking about how the more students saw a counselor, they felt more nurtured or supported and stuff like that. And again, I think that's what we're really pushing for students, being more drop-in friendly. So even if you have just a quick question, sometimes we always say this in our center, there's never a quick question because it always turns into like a 45-minute conversation here in the transfer center because it kind of snowballs into something else. So again, even if we're just talking, I hear a lot when I was at my previous campus in like the outreach department, there's a lot of myths that come with transfer as well. So a lot of times students will tell me things like, oh, it's just so much easier as a transfer student than freshman applicants. We can even break that down as well. And then a lot of the times we hear as well, even like, oh, I didn't even know we had guarantees into like, Cal States or UCs. And I think that really catches students' attention as well, that we can get these guarantees. Because like you said, you do have some second year students in your program who are possibly, had no idea that we were here. And I do hear that like, oh, I didn't even know I had to apply to get guaranteed admission into a UC campus. So touching on those things, and again, the earlier we can get them into our office, I think again they can utilize all the advantages of being a transfer student, right? So I think that's really important. But again, I think just again creating that relationship, creating that trust again, and I think a lot of students have told us they feel like with counseling, oh, I have to make an appointment, but there's never any appointments available. So again, we're trying to move away from that and become, again, we'll always have drop-in services available, but we'll also have appointments available as well. So we are really trying to meet the students where they're at, as well as really rethinking of our workshops as well, like creating, again, a more holistic approach to our workshop series as well.
Yeah, it's great that you say that because I think what I hear from our students who are student employees here, is typically like, oh, well, I already met with the counselor, so I don't have to go to the transfer center. So I always feel like it's an underutilized resource, right? Like that there is a lot more benefits to it. And I don't know if it's like the lack of knowledge or just like the extra step that they have to take. I don't know what it is. But I think maybe that relationship between counseling and the transfer center, like that encouragement of like, have you visited the transfer center, or even just making it intentional of like, next time you come, I'm going to ask if you went to the transfer center, right? Like things like that, that if the student already has a relationship with the counselor, because sometimes they pick one and they stick with it and they don't want to move to anybody else.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes can really be a big plus. Like once you get that encouragement, like, okay, you have to go to the we do that with our promise students. We're like, you as a promise student, they have to do like an engagement activity, and we tell them like the transfer center counts. So you have to, if you go to the transfer center, that would count as your activity. But just that I think we were talking in our group about working in silos. I think that's how we kind of start to break that down.
Yeah.
So
And I
thank you
think,
for sharing that.
no, yeah, thank you, Jennifer. And I think also we haven't had a transfer center coordinator, and it's been ran by our part-time counselor who is only here 12 hours a week. So that's a lot on her plate as well. So I think now that we do have a coordinator and we are trying to hire more staff because it is such an essential part of the community college campus, I think it's really important that, to get the word out. And I think that's been one of our big goals, our ongoing goals, is to really try to get the word out that we are here. Because again, I've been an adjunct counselor at multiple community colleges, and that's always been the case, is like people had no idea that there was a transfer center at any of my other community colleges either. So again, we're really just trying to get the word out, and again, creating that safe environment for all students as well. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else who has a question, comment for us?
Kristen just put a comment in the chat saying that classroom presentations would be great and it would likely help build rapport and trust in a safe space. And I totally agree with that. I think it's so nice to have classroom presentations, have you come in, have them meet you,
Yeah.
it's really helpful.
Yeah, I definitely did start that last semester when I first started. I was able to go, I did a presentation for the math department, so some of the math professors did invite me to their classroom. So yes, if you ever need a classroom presentation, myself, my colleagues are always happy to come in. Again, I know you have valuable time in your classrooms, but we do only try to take up like 5 to 10 minutes, again, just to create like a familiar face for students, so that way they're not nervous to come on into the transfer center. Yeah, she.
I just wanted to mention that, of course, I didn't have time to cover all the stuff in the study. In the first phase, they actually quantified students' transfer journey by identifying and quantifying a few milestones along the trajectory. So they looked at students, the units they achieved, they completed, and the transfer requirements they meet. So they were able to identify transfer explorers, momentum students, students near the gate, and students at the gate, then students who transferred, those transfer achievers. So these milestones, I wonder for each group, if we have some interventions treating them differently because they're at different stages, right? For those explorers, for those who just come to Miramar, let's focus on raising their awareness So they
Mhm.
know there's this transfer center that provides awesome services. Then for students who are near the gate, who
Mhm.
are at the gate, try to have that final touch. Like, it's
Yeah.
time, you're there. Let's bump that number a little bit. So I'm just thinking for different stages, different milestones, let's take on some activities, some special interventions for each of them. So just
Yeah.
intentionally targeting different students.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny that I in my interview I actually used the RP group study for that.
Uh-huh.
So we did talk about those touch points where I at my previous campus we really did utilize like our promise students. So intentionally we're intervening when they first start here, be like, hey, this is an option for you. These are the services that we provide. Again, just welcoming them, but also saying like you really need to come talk to us at the very beginning. And then, when students do hit like that 30 unit mark and they have taken like a transferable English, a transferable math, just to maybe email blast and maybe I should talk to you about this, but like really emailing them to say like, again, if you are getting ready to apply, we have these workshops, application workshops that we're offering, come talk to us. And then even after we do try to collect every student's when they come in and they utilize our application workshop services, we have a whole list of them and we do try to email them to say, hey, we have our like next steps workshops as well, because it's not just submitting your application. Like many students think there's a lot of follow-up that you have to do after you submit your application. So I'm glad that you bring that up, Shane. I think that's a great idea of really being intentional with, those different parts of students' journeys in the transfer process.
Yeah, even day one, as they fill
Correct.
up the application, they indicate their educational
Goals.
objective.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
their educational objective is to transfer to a 4-year, then we can start on day one reaching out to them and say, hey, you indicated that you want to transfer. Here's what you need to start to
Yeah.
prepare, even on day
Yeah.
one, right?
Yes, that's true. I love that. Yes. Um, and so yeah, we do this is our contact information. So if you or your students ever need assistance, again, just want to stop by, see the center. We are located in K1306. This is our phone number. I also put in our website as well, so you all could see the different services that we provide. We also usually put our workshop schedule on there as well. And then I put a QR code to our Canvas. So if you wanted to join, so you could keep up to date to let your students know, or just for you all to know as well of what's going on. We tend to really utilize our Canvas page to communicate. So if you do have students, that's what I would really always encourage students to do from day one, is to enroll into our Canvas page, because we can make announcements of like when reps are going to be here, when our fair is happening, when we're doing certain workshops, or if we know of any important dates or deadlines for the four-year universities, then we will post that on our Canvas as well. But again, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you especially to Laura and the group for inviting me to come present to you all.
Thank you so much, Emmy. This was so helpful, and we really, really appreciate all that you're doing in the Transfer Center, and we're excited to send students your way and really utilize all of the great services that you have to offer.
Thank you.
And I love that we were just talking about strategies. So thinking about what are things that we can do in order to really promote transfer for students and make it more likely, thinking about those different data points that we saw that she discussed from the RP group study. So we wanted to highlight a few that we thought of really that, came from the study itself. And then the next piece is we're going to put you all back into breakout groups and have you all think about how could you apply these strategies in your particular areas, whatever position you hold here at Miramar. But then also, are there others that you can brainstorm? What else comes to mind as helpful strategies? And then we'll bring you all back after about 10 minutes and chat about what each of the groups discussed. So a few that we wanted to highlight. So one, of course, is the program mapper. So thinking about if you're meeting with a student or have a small group of students come in or are in a class session, maybe just a really quick demo of the program mapper or showing them how to make an appointment with a counselor, or pointing out that counselors are available in particular programs, and that they might be able to get an appointment with an academic counselor through one of the programs that they're part of. Definitely highlighting the importance of taking transfer level English and math in their first year. I mean, those numbers are astronomical, over 300% more likely to transfer if they've taken those courses in year one. So just mentioning that, encouraging students to take that. I know sometimes those courses can be a little intimidating. Not everyone wants to jump into them. And so maybe highlighting that we've got an ASC with free tutoring. That's a really great possibility for students to be aware of the resources that can go along with taking those courses. Also considering how we say things. So April, I love that you mentioned the term probation, right? And how, detrimental it can really be to students. So let's talk about that. Let's get rid of that term. It definitely is something that is very criminalizing. And so thinking about what our language choices can lead to is really important. Demeanor and how we present info is also very, very essential. In some of the focus groups that they did, students identified that a single eye roll in a meeting with a counselor completely derailed them. It made them feel like they were not being heard, like no one cared about what they were doing. So even these things that seem so small, welcoming students with a smile, that can make all the difference. Building community. So that came up, Jen. I love that you discussed that. Really identifying all of the different ways that students can get involved on campus and identify communities, meet each other. So thinking about different student organizations that exist, looking at different mentorship opportunities, accessing support services, etc. And then, of course, referring students to the transfer center. So invite Emmy in, to your classroom, but also send students over. I love, Jen, that you pointed out that in Promise, one of the ways that students can get their engagement activity done is by going to the transfer center. Maybe more of us could do that in our different areas on campus. So at this point, we will send you off to your breakout room. So think about these, but also other ones. We can't wait to hear what you all come up with, what ideas you have for how we could incorporate these strategies into our different roles. Welcome back, everyone. We're excited to hear about your different discussions. So we thought if each group could offer up maybe even just one strategy that you all discussed, that would be fantastic. You should be able to unmute now. So go ahead and jump in. And if there is any issue, raise your hand and we'll make sure that you get unmuted.
I can go first. So in our group, we talked a little bit about how do we begin the sense of belonging. I think that was one that stood out to us the most. And we were talking about how we feel like Miramar is still kind of in an identity crisis, like we don't really know who we are, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of the schools have slogans and they're very like, I know City has like, you belong here, and Mesa is like, we are Mesa. And I know Dr. Odu has been pushing for Miramar Love, and we were talking about how like that only has picked up in some pockets, right? But it really hasn't gotten into students yet. Like for students to feel like that is what we're here for. And so Kristen actually had a great suggestion and was like, it should be Miramar Love and belonging, right? Like, and it should be everywhere. It should be in the classrooms. It should be on t-shirts. It should be something that we are very proud of, right? Like that students see it everywhere and they feel a sense of like, okay, I can ask my question and nobody's going to judge me for my question. So we were just kind of teasing out on like, how do we have an identity? And I know April said that way back when they did have something like I forgot what it was.
Yeah, when I came here in 1999, it was we teach, we care. I like love and belonging a lot better, but I've been here since 1999, so I don't remember when they stopped saying it, but it used to be a logo that we had all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just kind of a small thing, right, that we could do to make sure students feel appreciated and like they belong. And I know another thing that kind of came up too is just also like the professional development that goes into also our staff, like how to interact with our students. I have students of color who happen to be working here in outreach, and they face microaggressions on the phone all the time. And we have to address that and make sure that they feel like somebody cares and that somebody's there to make sure that they're heard, and that they're understood. So a lot of times, we tend to maybe be like, well, let's dismiss that, not because we don't care, but because maybe we don't have time, but really making the time to make sure that our students feel supported. Because at the end of the day, whether they're staff, student, a part-time student, they all need to feel that way, right? When they're here. So those were the two things that we kind of discussed a little bit, but we got cut off. So, we couldn't get all the great ideas, but those are the two things that came up.
Thank you so much, Jen. I saw April and Ryan, you've unmuted. Do one of you want to jump in?
I can go for it. We were thinking much bigger than transfer. We were hoping, kind of shooting for the stars. Could we have a robust peer mentorship program? Students that have been here 2 or 3 years could be paired up with someone who's first semester. I know we've done some work towards that in STEM courses. We've had cohort courses and things with the hope that after the first semester, that students who pass these cohort courses could then come back and be a peer mentor in subsequent semesters. I don't know how that's developed. I was part of some teams that were developing those, so I don't know what's happened since then. But I know we've done work for faculty mentors in STEM, a lot of work there, but just a college-wide, just peer mentors can seriously create the sense of belonging, I think, that we're looking for, and just how well students receive and are open to a peer, as opposed to, faculty and counselors and so on, that they really, their true self probably can come out a lot easier with a peer.
Thank you so much, everyone. It sounds like your conversations were amazing. We can't wait to hear more about what all of your ideas were. We definitely hope to keep these conversations going. We're going to pass this over to Nisa now to talk about the big picture.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much for dedicating time this morning to really engage in this topic, which is really important for us and for our students. Sometimes, so now I'm going to talk about the big picture, right? And we've talked about a lot of the different strategies that we can implement to really support the success of our Black and African American students, especially in transfer, but in connection to a lot of different things, right? And so, as a campus, as a system within the California community colleges, we often create these different plans and we're asked to implement different frameworks. And sometimes it's kind of like, I don't know what we're doing now. I don't know what the new buzzword is, or like, I'm not really connected to whatever it is that we're working on for this or for that. But in reality, when we sit down and have these discussions, we're all connected to all of these different initiatives, whether it's the student equity plan, the guided pathways framework, the strategic enrollment management plan. All of these things that we're discussing today are deeply connected to these metrics for success for our students and the strategies to ensure that success, right? When we're looking at the student equity plan, some of the metrics include completion and transfer level math and English, which is a significant factor in transfer success for our students, right? We're looking at persistence and transfer as a metric. And we look at all of that data for all of our student groups, but in particular, focusing in on which students are experiencing that disproportionate impact across these metrics. When you're looking at guided pathways, we're looking at the different pillars, clarifying the path, staying on the path, ensuring learning. These different strategies that we talked about today align within those different pillars. And one of the more recent plans that we've developed is that strategic enrollment management plan, where we're in particular, we're really focusing in on increasing retention and persistence and building community. So sometimes, as I mentioned, like we'll hear these different plans that we're working on, and we're not really sure how they may align with the work that we do or how they may intersect across the different areas. But there is intention behind what we're trying to do within LEAD, within the campus, to really bring to light those intersections and alignment so that we all understand what our role is individually and collectively as departments and as a campus in ensuring the success of our students. So if I move over to the next slide, just to really briefly touch on some of these different strategies, right? When we're looking at the student equity plan, we focused on 6 barriers that we have to address in order to really look at intentional strategies to support our students. So culturally responsive programs, right? How do we infuse culturally responsiveness, do things with an equity lens as we design our interventions? Programs like Emoja, right? That was an incredible program that has led to success for many students across the state, right? And we don't have that yet here, but how do we develop some of those similar strategies that Emoja adopts to create that sense of belonging for our students? You're talking about culturally responsive curriculum, right? And that goes hand in hand with some of the professional development. We have programs, or we received a grant on culturally responsive practices. And so we're starting our new CREATE cohort. That's Culturally Responsive Educators Academy and Training for Equity. So providing our faculty with different opportunities to reflect on why there is institutional racism built into the structure of education, and how do we combat that, right? And how do we work to really create a better sense of belonging for our students and connection? I'll skip over to, guided pathways. Some of the different strategies that we talked about are, the development of the ACPs and creating community within those ACPs. Having the opportunity to really look and dig deeper into that disaggregated data, not only for the college, but for our courses. And now talking more about how our data specific to services that our students access, right? We haven't really looked at that very deeply. And now that things are transitioning across the state, they're asking us to look at that data and how do we make connections? Like, is there a connection between the student accessing services earlier on? And there is, based on, what we saw in this study. And again, with strategic enrollment management, right? Like building that student engagement. What does that look like for me in my role and for you in your role? What is an equity-minded culture? How do we create these connections and intentionality in what we do to collectively support our students? So again, we hear these different plans and frameworks, and sometimes it's not very easy to connect why we do those things, but when you put it into the context of our daily work, you can totally see the alignment and the connections. Leading into the kickoff that we'll have on Thursday, you'll start to see that bigger picture alignment, what we're doing with our strategic goals and how all of these different plans intersect and connect. We started talking last semester about understanding our why, right? Our why is for our students. Our why is to ensure their success. And then now we're going to dig deeper into the how. And that's kind of, the start of our conversation today. And we'll continue throughout our conversations throughout the semester college-wide. And it is connected even to the larger scale for the system as a whole when you're talking about Vision 2030. Those three statements down at the bottom, we're talking about equity and access, equity and support, and equity and success. And those are all deeply connected with how we are being much more intentional in how we support our students.
Thank you so much, Nisa, and thank you to everyone who attended today. We really, really appreciate you coming out. We definitely want to continue these discussions. I think that so many of the things that came up in the RP group study, we need to keep talking about them, and there's a lot more within that. So we have identified at least a few different avenues that we would like to keep chatting about. So one is that she is working on getting some updated transfer data so that we can look at what's happened throughout the pandemic. There also are some focus groups happening that the district is working on with Black African American students. And then this conversation about academic probation. We're definitely talking about it as a district across really the, California community colleges and also here at Miramar. And I think for sure we need, an entire session dedicated to that. So I know was going to jump in. Can you unmute you? Okay, perfect.
Oh, just a reminder, we were able to pull the most current data last minute. So the data I showed you.
Amazing. Look at that.
Multiple year worth of data with pandemic in between, so you get to compare.
That is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. I know I was looking at it and I was like 21, 22, that's pretty recent.
Yes.
But I know you had mentioned wanting to get something more. So I thought there was something else out there. So that's fantastic. So then we've got some amazing data that we can analyze further, and in conjunction with those focus groups, we'll get some more qualitative data as well. So thanks, everyone. We really appreciate your attendance today. We wish you a wonderful rest of Flex Week. We hope that you stay dry out there, and we'll talk soon.